the first full topic in terms of cognitive functions we're going to talk about is perception. And in this video, I'll just give you a sense of what kind of aspects of perception we will talk about, because perception is a vast topic that involves a bunch of different senses and so forth. So what I'm doing here, because this is an introduction to cognitive science course, is that I'll focus on some broad problems of perception that actually come into play for all of our senses. And then in this case, I'll mostly focus on the visual system and how we process visual information, visual perceptual information. If you're interested in perception, our department also offers a course that just deals with perception. The course is actually called Perception. So what are we going to do in this section? Well, first of all, I'll introduce some, as I said, quote unquote, problems of perception. And what I mean by problems is how do we make sense of the sensory input we get and how do we perceive? And then in terms of vision, I'll first start talking about how the visual system is actually organized, how we get from our eyeball to our brain and what happens in the brain and different parts of the brain and how they contribute. And then we'll talk about a couple of different examples that nicely demonstrate how the way our brain is wired helps with how we perceive, but also the knowledge we have about the world also influences how we perceive. And we'll go through this by talking about contour perception, meaning how do we detect like edges and things like that. We'll talk about the perception of depth. We talk about size. We talk about what's called Gestalt principles that help with all of this. And then all of that is to build up to more sort of higher level. How do we recognize things like objects and so forth? And I think by going through this, you get a decent sense of just what the kinds of questions are in terms of perceptual research, how the brain is organized, different factors that come into play and so forth. Nonetheless, I have one rest category where there are a couple of other things I want to mention that don't really fall within the first categories that I have here.